Hey everybody, welcome back. Bad Pennies are back. I'm Sho and this is my friend Alan. And we're in a series of growing up, young men growing up. I don't know, what are we going to call these? Young growth? Men
Well,
growth?
let's just say growing up and parenting, boys.
Okay, so boys. So now we're at 16 to 18 years old. We started with 0 to 5 and then went from 5 to 15.
So somewhere between 15 and 17, but I would err on the side of earlier rather than later.
Okay.
Your ability to parent has evaporated.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the little timer clock has now expired, and you don't get to parent anymore. So all of the parenting that you have done really ends somewhere around 14 or 15. And okay, you're going to go like, why? Well, because they won't listen. Number one, and they no longer want to hear what you have to say about stuff unless they ask. Unless they ask. If they're asking, it's different. Right. But you can't. As a parent, they got to listen. No matter, you're going to give them the lesson whether they want it or not. Right. That's just the deal when you're parenting. But when you're past. When they're too old for that, and this is the mistake a lot of parents make is, in fact, I happen to be aware of a couple of situations right now where children are in their 20s and their parents are trying to still parent them and treat them like young children, and it's insulting to them. I mean, I've watched this. I mean, I've literally watched it in real time, just sort of sitting back and watching the dynamic in the room and seeing the 22-year-old young man react to being parented and how offensive it was to him.
Right. But for we're going back to 15 and 16. And this is the point where you no longer are the direct. You're not the direct parent. You're the guide.
You can be a guide, and advisor. You have to be a guide, and you are also the source of the boundaries still, because boundaries do not end at 15.
Okay.
Right? Boundaries are boundaries, and they can't be crossing them. If they cross the boundaries, then there's a price.
At this point, are they still looking to the father as an example?
I don't think. Well, yes, they always are, even if it's subconscious. So I don't think that your behavior. You can't let go. There's never a point. This is also, we talked earlier about the burden. That it stops being fun and you can't be their friend and it doesn't feel good anymore. The job of being a father is a burden in some ways, even though that there's great benefit from it, right? So, but it's still a burden that you carry because you can't be their friend. And that you have to continue to be your very best as a man. Okay. You have to continue to maintain high levels of character, standards, and always be working on whatever flaws you have in your life that you're developing yourself to take care of those things.
Okay.
Whatever weaknesses that you're overcoming your weaknesses, and that your children are seeing that you're always growing and always developing. Okay. That will stay with them.
Okay.
For most kids, that will stay with them all of their life because they'll want to be that way too.
Right.
Certainly, something that I gleaned from my own parents was that they never stopped growing.
Okay.
All right. My mom more than my dad, but both of them always had an open mind that there was always something to learn.
Right.
Always something to learn. Always something to grow and be better at. So. So that and all of their kids, all four of them, took that on in their life.
I think at that point in my life, 15, 16 years old, the example that I was seeing was handle my responsibilities. I was seeing my dad handle his responsibilities, and he got the kids. We had our list of responsibilities that we had to take care of. We had chores, we had obligations.
Right.
And that was something that I definitely remember about being that age.
Those were the standards in your household, and your parents maintained their own responsibilities, right? That they
did.
So it's not just handling them; it's embracing them. It's a context about how you are about them, right? So for all of the duties and responsibilities that you have in your life, and that are all based around, you know, the commitments that you have.
Yeah.
That how you bring yourself to that constantly without complaining.
Yeah.
Right? Griping and complaining. And that it's, you know, when I say a burden, I don't mean a burden like, oh, I'm a parent.
Yeah, I hate to do this.
I have children.
Yeah.
That's not the kind of burden we're talking about. The burden is that it isn't fun.
Okay, but it's still.
It may have moments, but you know, and when when there are those moments, those joyous moments, you make the most of it.
Right. But at this age, at 16 years old, 17 years old, when they fail, it's okay to point out that they failed.
Yes.
You're not going to coddle them at this point.
No.
This is the time for them to learn from their mistakes.
Right. And again, if they come to you, you know, the question is most likely going to be, so what are you learning? What did you learn?
Yeah.
And also, you know, when they're over 15, when they do cross boundaries,
what are the consequences?
The consequence is not imposed by you, is necessarily the best thing to do. Often you give them the opportunity to impose consequences on themselves.
Right. Well, I mean, they have to recognize that there is a consequence for crossing a boundary. Not necessarily that it comes from you, but just in general, there's a consequence.
Look, taking the Xbox away from my buddy's son is like the worst thing in the world. Mm-hmm. Right. At 15, you know, he was, still into today, he's just, you know, when he's got any amount of free time, he's on his Xbox, you know, gaming with his buddies. So to take the Xbox away, it was like the horror of horrors as far as penalties are concerned. Okay. But boundaries were set, and whenever he crossed the boundary, his solution to his consequence for himself was losing the Xbox for a week. And the thing is that because it was his own choice of consequence, he took it on.
Okay.
And then at the end of the consequence, you can ask him, so what did you learn?
Okay.
So, because, you know, if they're not learning from a consequence, then there's no point.
Right.
There's no point. It's just punishment. And you don't want to ever punish your children. Punishment is, as the old joke goes, you know, the punishment will continue until morale improves. But we know as human beings that punishment doesn't work. It is not a deterrent or a way of getting someone to improve who they are.
But it's nature. To every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Yes. So also, by the way, while we were just talking about this, I just one little thing that I just thought of that sort of applies to from the time they're born until they're 15 or so, 16, 17. There's one more responsibility that you have.
What's that?
As a father, as parents, actually, not just as a father, is to provide great memories for your children.
That's important. Yeah.
Right. It's probably one of the better things you have to do.
As a parent, is your responsibility to provide great memories for your child.
Your great memories, the great memories of their childhood will get them through tough parts of their life.
And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to take them to Disney World and all that other stuff.
Oh no, I think taking them to Disney World or Disneyland is a great thing to do because.
But also, like teaching them how to ride a bike and everything is all part of that too.
Exactly, but you know, the vacations and the family things, and even, you know, for me, one of the great memories I have is when I was old enough to play cards with my parents.
Okay.
Now we did play family games and stuff, you know, from the we had them all from, I think, you remember Parcheesi? I think it's still around.
Yeah,
Parcheesi. Well, we played Monopoly,
right.
And then with my buddies and with my friends, we played Risk. My parents were not interested in playing Risk, but then we got into card games and very similar to Bridge, where you work with a partner.
Yeah. And
so my brother, who was 18 months younger than me, when the two of us were old enough to play cards with my parents, we did it. We did, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week.
And that's a memory that you have.
Beyond all of the vacations.
Yeah.
And all of the things that we all did as a family, those are my favorite.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I took my kids to Disney World. I hope they were old enough to remember it. I mean, that was the goal. The goal was to give them a good memory.
Well, yeah. So ask, at some point, just ask them. See what they do remember. See what stuck. So, but that is one of your responsibilities, and it doesn't necessarily end at 15. But at 15, the likelihood of them listening to anything that you have to say about how to live life is anything you do say is they're going to do the opposite. So it's probably better just to let them come to you at this point. Let them come to you, and then you can be their guide. You can be their coach. You can guide them in ways. And look, there will even be a point where your sons are going to go away and you're going to have no influence over them at all until they come back and realize that you have something of value to say. But until they realize that you have something of value for them, they're on their own.
Okay.
And during this period, they're also going to be in conflict with you as a father in the same house. And it's a tough time. It's a tough time for them. They're through puberty, or mostly through puberty, and girls come into the picture, and their sexuality, and also what are they going to do in life, and what are they interested in, and all of these things, that these challenges are happening for them, and it's a tumultuous period.
It is.
So, you can just be there and be the consistent and stable man in life, right? No matter what happens. I know that some of that period. I remember once I even I went to a bar with my buddies when I was old enough, and drank too much and had no way home. I mean, I had my car. But it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, and everybody else had left, and I was there.
Okay.
And I called my dad.
Right.
And he came and picked me up, and he never said a word. And the next day, he took me back to the car. So, and still never said a word.
Okay.
Right? Because, and what I got always was that my safety was incredibly important to him.
Okay.
And he would rather me call him for help than to try to drive home and have an accident.
Right. Okay.
All right. So that's the kind of dad you can be. Be on time for your kids. All right.
Yeah.
When we were talking about character and standards.
Yeah.
So never be late for your children. Never be late for your children.
How important is it to go to the kids' basketball games and baseball games and sit in the stands and cheer for them? How important is it to that kid to look in the stands and see his father? Is it really that big of a deal?
Yeah, it is.
It's
pretty important.
Yeah.
It's pretty important. And
I mean, are they going to be scarred if you don't go to the games and everything?
Well,
I mean, I wasn't. I mean, I know. Let me say it this way. There were times when I was a kid where my dad didn't go to, especially my baseball games. He didn't go. Maybe he was working. Maybe he was doing something else. I don't know. It didn't make me feel sad or love him any less because he wasn't there.
Here's the difference. If you can, go. If you can't go, you don't.
Okay. I mean, I go to my kids' stuff.
Your children will know the difference.
Okay.
What will scar them is not that you didn't show up. What will scar them is that you didn't show up when you could, when you were and you sat at home and watched TV.
You didn't care,
or drank beer, or went out with your buddies.
Okay.
That will that will make an impact on them. So children will understand because you're working and you're providing for them. Mm-hmm. That's what fathers do. I don't ever want to tell you to not do your job as far as taking care of your family and making money. But do understand that, I know a lot of men who are so driven that they pretty much missed all of their kids' childhood.
Okay.
And at the time, they thought that was the most important thing for them to do. I have found over the years, talking to them now that their kids are all grown up, that they have a lot of regret. and that they felt that they actually could have done a different job or a better job. And no, they didn't need to make as much money as they thought that they needed to make. That took them away from the family as much as they did. And in the end, the money doesn't mean anything, but they missed their kids' childhood, and that does mean something.
Okay.
So so you've got to figure out. And I don't want to use the word balance, but maybe that is the right word. But for lack of a better word right now, I'll use the word balance. You've got to find a balance in a way that you serve your commitment to your family as well as your commitment to your career. All right. There are men who, God, I don't know, do I want to actually name names? There are famous men that books have been written about who pretty much were famous world figures, traveled all the time, and missed everything. Had families. So they were home long enough to have sex, right? But but that was it. They came home and then they were gone, and they really didn't experience their kids growing up. And some of these children have written books over the years about their anger at their father for not being there. And what's interesting is in some cases they've written second books where they've kind of gotten over it and realized that in some ways they were coming at it from a very selfish standpoint. But you do have to understand that children are selfish, right? Children are selfish. They grow up. They can't live on their own. They can't make their own money. And they have needs. They don't know what they're doing. They haven't experienced the world. And so the whole focus, as a parent, by the way, once you're a parent, so here's a rule that I'll put out there. Once you're a parent, your life is no longer your own.
No, yeah, that's guaranteed.
Well,
yeah.
Well, if everybody realized it was guaranteed, that would eliminate a lot of stuff going on, right?
Yeah.
So even though that it is a duh moment, it's still something we need to be reminded of.
Yeah.
That we don't get to have our own life the way we want it, any way we want it. Once you have children, they come first.
Okay.
The children come first.
Yeah.
They become a priority,
right,
in many ways.
Okay.
So that's it. So during this last sort of time at home is a very difficult time for the father, and where the son is pretty much going to rebel against everything. You're competing with each other inside the house.
The kid wants independence.
The kid wants independence. He also wants attention from the mother that is divided up with the father.
Yeah.
And he wants to be number one in the house, which he can't be because the father is.
Right.
And you have to win that battle as a father. That the son cannot win the battle of being number one in the house, right? He has to go out and build his own house to be number one in.
Yeah.
And so you have to, it's going to be a clashing of the titans in a way, except that you are the ultimate gladiator. You ultimately will win that battle. You must for your son's success and his life.
Right. And that's a mental battle, not a physical battle.
Yeah. You're not. My father hit me once and I hit him once. So and neither one of them was right. And so but there's a point where you can take your dad.
But you don't.
You just don't. You don't have to. You don't have to prove that. You just know. Once you can take him. Look, there may be metaphoric things like with my dad. My dad was was a world-class pool player.
Okay.
And when he was in the military, he pretty much made a ton of money during the Korean War shooting pool and beating everybody for money, right? And he put all that money away. He didn't gamble. He wasn't a gambler. All the money that he made shooting pool and winning at pool in the Army, he put away. And when he came out, he had a big stack of money that he and his brother went into business with, right?
Okay.
So my dad, even though he hadn't played in years, when we finally had a pool table, he would just clean our clocks. No matter how much we practiced, we'd spend hours in the basement, shooting pool and trying to get good at banks and, all this kind of stuff. And then, oh, Dad, come and play. So like when my dad would be in town, on the weekends, he'd come down, clean our clocks. And that happened for 10 years until the day that I beat him. I only beat him once, but I mean, it's like, but that was a big deal because the next game he cleaned my clock again. So, right. but the fact that I actually had come to a point where I could beat my father at pool was literally a metaphoric milestone for me.
Okay.
And every son needs that metaphoric milestone,
yeah.
But that's not really in this period when you're up till 18, 19 years old. You're still in the house, and if children go to college, they're going to be in the house for a while longer as they're becoming, your sons will actually become a young adult.
Yeah.
Some things change during that. So we'll do another podcast on what happens after, like, in some ways they're out of the house.
Okay.
Or they're still living in your house, but they're still out of your house. Yeah, the nest leaving transition.
Okay.
Hopefully, although in America right now, the amount of young adults living at home is the highest it's ever been.
Yeah, the nest just gets a little bit bigger instead of them actually leaving the nest.
Yeah, I have thoughts about that too that I want to address.
Next episode.